Good night, everyone. John tonight. God is good and God is good all the time. My name is Abigail Spirit Divine. I'm here to give you a word on tonight. And the topic gonna be a woman of discernment. This gonna be on Gabrielle. She gonna have to use her discernment to help her husband out. First I'm gonna read a little scripture from First Samuel 25, chapter 25, 32, verse 33. So David said to Gabriel, praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel, who has sent you today to meet me. May you be blessed for keeping me from bloodshed this day and from avenging myself with my own hands. Because you see, David, you know, since David was a boy, David was working in a field. David was just tearing animals out and stuff with his hand. That's why he was able to tear down that giant. Even though it was God's strength, but he also was working in that field. Because he said he would have told him off his hands. So this story is about hospitality. Gabriel's husband, David, failure to return hospitality to David and his men. So her husband had insulted David, you know, insulted his name and his character. Now the husband caused harm to him and the whole family. So his wife Gabrielle is very intelligent, a woman of discernment. She think quickly to help find a peaceful solution to save her household. Now this is a smart woman. She very intelligent and she had discernment. She had to think quick, and that's how we all have to do. We have to pray to God, including myself, to get us discernment. So when issues come along, we're able to think quickly. And able to solve it. And you got to kind of solve it. She solved it peacefully. You know, without any hassle. So this First Samuel 25 story gonna come from 1 to 42. Now Samuel had died. Samuel was close to David and also close to Saul. So now Samuel had died, and then David moved into the desert of Paran. A certain rich man, her husband, and his wife Gabrielle. They was rich and wealthy. So David was in the wilderness. He heard that her husband was shearing sheep. David loves to be shearing sheep. So when David was a boy, he was shearing sheep, and David had his men looking after his sheep. That's the kind of stuff David loved to do. So he moved in the desert right next to them where the sheep and everything is at. So they kept an eye on the sheep, took care of them, so David sent his men to her husband just to greet him. That's all they would want to do, to greet him. Remember, David just moved there after Samuel died. He moved into this desert right next to Gabriel and her husband. Remember, David moved next to him, and he just wanted to be nice. So when David men arrived, because David sent his men over there just to get disagreeing. You know how you do when you move in a neighborhood, you discreet everyone. So her husband failure to return hospitality back to David men when he arrived there. So her husband had insulted David by refusing to offer him and his men the typical Eastern courtesy. He was just such a mean man. So her husband had no good hospitality at all. He was mean and he was very rude. Insulted David's name in his character. Like who is David? Who is him? Now he claimed he didn't know David, but he knew his father. Who Jesse's son? So he claimed he didn't know David. But at the end of his conversation, oh, Jesse's son. So I mean, you know who David was. You were just being rude. So all David was doing was letting him know, that he was taking care of his sheep. That's all. So word get back to David, so he was telling him that, I'm taking care of your sheep. I just moved right next to y'all. Could you give my servants something to eat? Since they I'll be out there in that field. So he was like, who is y'all? For me to give y'all some food. So the word got back to David, and now he wanted to kill the whole household. He wanted to kill the whole household. He already said earlier he'll break them into half with his hands. So now he made it bad for his whole household. Not David is nobody to play with. He told that big giant down and then took his head off with his hand. And he was just a boy. Now he's a grown man, so imagine what he can do now. So her husband put his wife and the whole household at risk. Gabrielle heard about the situation and she could have responded. When she heard about it, she could have criticized him. She could have cursed him. She could have called him stupid. She could have called him all kind of names. But she didn't, because this is a smart, intelligent woman. This is a woman of discernment. So her husband, you know, um, she did neither one of those. Instead, Gabrielle, she think quickly on her toes. She carried courage in one hand and provision in her other hand. So her whole household is on the line. That's all she's looking at. She looking at is on the line, and she had to save it. So she restored peace on the behalf of her husband. Now she went to David. She bowed down to David. She asked David for forgiveness. On the behalf of her husband. And David was angry. So she was peaceful. She went to him in a nice attitude way. You know, and she released and calmed David down with his anger. So the peace she did it with peace. Her discernment to calm David anger down. And she also not only calmed David anger down, she also honored God. By saying that David, that you fight the Lord battle. So she know about the God. She know about David God. She knows that David is fighting battles and battles, for God. So and no wrongdoing will be found in you as long as you live. Even though her husband does not have no hospitality at all, but his wife does. Gabrielle offered hospitality to the face of David. David was very grateful that this wise woman intervened and stopped him from committing murder. You know, so David said, I thank you. I thank you for meeting me. Because you saved me from murder someone. You saved me from shedding blood. You saved me from breaking somebody into hell because I was coming to destroy your whole family. Thank you for intervening. By she intervened, she was very nice to show hospitality to David. She said, forgive, her husband. She forgive her on the behalf of her husband from being mean and rude. So 10 days, 10 days later, the Lord struck her husband down and he died. Because he was just too mean. He didn't have no hospitality, no courtesy at all. They were just being nice. He sent his men over there, to greet him. That was his name. We let him know we just moved over there. So before her husband died, Gabriel had told him everything that he done to David and his men, being rude and putting harm on the whole household. So we don't know. She told him everything. So after she told him everything, the crisis that had been averted, his heart turned into stone. You know, so I guess he didn't want his wife to know that he was so rude. So by she told him everything, that you done to David and his men, his heart had turned into stone. So God dealt with this hard-hearted man in his own way. So when we have crisis or anything that come against us and and it's out of our hands, that may cause harm in any kind of way, we need to pray. We need to pray to God and ask God for discernment. So this woman already had discernment. She already was intelligent. So we too can pray to God for discernment. In case we have any kind of situation Anything that going in our life, we see it's out of our hands. Her stone was out of her hands. Because they were already was coming towards their home to destroy the whole family. So she had to hurry up and think on her toes. She had to think so quickly, to come up with something to stop David. Because if she wouldn't interfere, David would have did harm to the whole family, including her. So she think quickly on her toes with her discernment and handled it quietly and peaceful, without any kind of drama. She didn't go in there, look, let me tell you that. She didn't do all of that. She dealt with the situation peacefully, and David forgive. David, and also David, David said, I thank you for meeting me, for me shedding blood, because I was coming to do your whole family, and she also honor God. She know about David and his God. So she calmed David anger and he told her to go in peace. So she calmed David down because David was getting all his equipment together. He was getting his men together, and then she came and bowed down to his toes, to his feet, and apologized on the behalf of her husband. And after she calmed David anger down, David said, okay, you could go ahead on in peace. Your whole household are saved. So now with her quick thinking, she saved her whole household. She said, including herself. She saved her whole household from getting killed. Because David hadn't got his equipment together. He was getting his men together. He was on his way over there. So Gabrielle showing hospitality and interfere with kindness. And that's how you have to do when you have situations, especially if you may have to interfere with your husband or your wife. You have to deal with situation kindly. On your lips and grace. In her heart. She also honored God. Gabrielle used the research that God had placed, at her disposal to help find a peaceful solution to any possible exposure situation. She know that situation was out of hand. She ain't had no time to be thinking or what I should do because David was on his way. So she had to think quickly to stop him from coming to harm her whole household because of her husband being so mean and rude. So Gabrielle is a woman of discernment. With discernment, it helps you to think quickly to make the right decision, which we see that she did, and she saved her whole family. So one, hospitality goes a long way of just being nice and kind when someone is being nice to you. If someone being nice to you, don't just be mean and rude. Now some people can come across you and be mean and rude, and still be nice. It's like David and his men came and greeting him. Being nice. And so they're thinking that he was gonna show kindness back to him, but he didn't. Too. David was being nice, letting him know I be looking after your sheep. I move right next door to you. Could you be nice to my men? Just give them something to drink. Some food. So he was just being real. Well, who is you? Who is David? Who is I to give my food to y'all? So the husband refused to be nice. He was rude. He insulted David's character. And we see that Noah have no hospitality at all. So the husband the husband being rude to David meant caused harm to his whole household. David was set out to kill him and the whole family. So five, his wife came to his rescue. She interfered. Gabrielle have a good hospitality skills. She used her skills to David to reason with him. She used her discernment quickly to solve a peaceful way to calm David's anger. And she did. She saved her whole household. So I use if your husband or your wife don't have hospitality, one of you have to have it to step forward like she did. It don't need both partners be mean and rude. Somebody, have to be nice and kind. Have to be wise. have discernment, because one might, um, be get herself in trouble that caused harm to the whole family, like her husband did. Luckily that she was intelligent, she had discernment, and she had to think quickly because and she ain't had no time to be sitting around. What could I do? Because they was on this way. They was on his way. So she had to think quickly. And you have to have discernment to make the best decision. So have hospitality and pray for discernment in case it get out of hand. You want to try to deal with the situation peacefully and kind and be kindness. So Gabrielle, she was a woman of discernment. You know, had to step forward on the behalf of her husband. She had to step forward on the behalf of her husband. So so this page was about hospitality, and having discernment to handle different situations in a kindness, peaceful manner. So you won't get out of hand. If she would have went there with a different attitude towards David, he would have went on, continue on heading on to her house, destroy her, and went to her house and destroy everybody else that was in the house. But by she had discernment, she very intelligent, so she had to come up with someone gonna be people, and she also went there with food. She went there with food. She had so much food that she offered to David. So she went there being kind and nice. She had good hospitality skills. Because she had fixed so much food. And she took all that food to give to David and bowed down and asked him for forgiveness on the behalf of her husband. And in a way, David said, your household, are safe. It's safe. So you can go in peace. So Sheena did her good deed for that day on the behalf of her husband. And 10 days later, she told him everything that went on. That she couldn't tell him the same day because when she went back on, he was drunk. So she had to wait till he was sober to tell him everything that she know what you did to David and his man. So the next day she told him, his heart turned into stone. That he felt so guilty that his wife had to go on the behalf of him to apologize to David for the rudeness that he did. And his heart couldn't take it. It turned into stone. And he died. So that's a story. That's a story of a woman of discernment, Gabrielle. She had to interfere on behalf of her husband. So I hope y'all have a blessed day, and I'll see y'all on the next video.